All right. Okay, so we are started. Just a reminder, will have trouble seeing you if you raise your hand. So if you have a question, a comment, or just plain want to ask anything or provide additional, story or anything on anything we're going over today, please just holler out, unmute yourself. If you want to unmute yourself temporarily, you could just hit the space bar on your keyboard, and that is the easiest way to do it. All right, this is our annual HUD Repair Bootcamp training. So today's training is all about HUD, and if you don't know how HUD is connected, we're talking about FHA, VA, USDA, home loan styles and things you can do as an agent to be an expert in that area to help both your sellers and buyers navigate the world of FHA loans. So let's jump right into it. This is kind of a longer training, so I will try not to keep you any longer than needed. But like I said, just holler out if you have any questions. All right, HUD style financing refers to government-backed loan programs designed to make home ownership more accessible for a specific group of buyers. These loans are ideal for first-time home buyers or those with limited down payment funds and offer flexible terms, lower credit score requirements, and favorable interest rates. So those HUD style financings, again, are going to be your FHA, VA, USDA type of funding. I know a lot of you who have sold homes in the past have some experience with that, and there's a little bit of red tape and hoops you got to jump through to make sure that your clients can get the home that they want using these types of loan programs. So first, we're going to go over FHA loans. This is a 10,000-foot view. I don't expect any of you guys to be a complete expert on loan programs. You guys are not loan originators. If you need additional information, please have your clients talk to Sarah. But it is important for us as real estate professionals to at least understand a little bit about the product that our clients have. That way you can help them navigate through their home sale, their home buying experience, and also their loan. So FHA stands for Federal Housing Administration. These loans are super popular with first-time home buyers because they require a lower down payment. So their down payment is as low as 3.5%. But again, I'm saying as low as. So you can have an FHA loan and put more than 3.5% down. You could put 5%, you could put 10%, whatever that looks like to your client and what their desire is. So 3.5 is the minimum that you can have on a loan program. Hold on one second. We got somebody jumping in here. All right, great. So let's go back over to, sorry, I got my screen all messed up here. Let's go back over here and pop back in. Sorry again, because I'm using one screen. All right. So FHA loans also allows for more lenient credit requirements. So you don't have to have spotless credit. Anna Rogers, I think you're raising your hand. Just holler out, hun. Anna, do you have a question? No? Okay. So it does have more lenient credit requirements. So you don't have to have squeaky clean credit. I mean, obviously the client can't have absolutely terrible credit. There are minimums for those requirements, and you would want to talk to the specific lender to see what those minimums are, because FHA carries a minimum, but then your lender can also have an internal override on what they require as a minimum. So it's not so black and white. Okay. USDA loans stands for U.S. Department of Agriculture. So these are more designed for buyers in rural or suburban areas. These are not going to be your metro areas. If you're looking to help a client in downtown Pittsburgh purchase a home, USDA is not going to be the ideal loan for them. It is 100% financing with no down payment required for those who qualify, and it requires a lower mortgage insurance premium than FHA loans. So if you don't know what a mortgage insurance premium is, it is for loans that consumers are not traditionally putting 20% down on. There is a mortgage insurance premium that insures the 20% for the period of time until that 20% is paid off. At that point, then you can refinance the loan and have the mortgage insurance premium removed. On USDA, there are lower costs and they do not conform to regular FHA style premiums. So they do save a bit of money on their monthly payment. Next, we talk about VA loans, which is the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs. These are exclusive for veterans and active duty service members and their eligible spouses. So it offers 100% financing with no down payment and no private mortgage insurance is required. So there is no private mortgage insurance required for those. These government-backed loans aim to make homeownership affordable and they reduce financial barriers, promote stability through homeownership in communities across the nation. So those are the three that we're going to be looking at when we talk about HUD repairs, FHA, USDA, and VA. Do understand that even on conventional loans, you can have repairs that need to be done if the appraiser calls them out on the appraisal report or if the underwriter notates them based on what the appraiser has provided them. So even though the HUD repairs that we're going to be talking about are kind of specific to these types of loan styles, sometimes they can come into play with conventional loans as well. All right, importance of property condition. The condition of property plays a critical role in financing. The lenders want to ensure the home's value and structural integrity aligned with the loan amount. So here's why property condition is essential. Impact on loan approval. So these are what your lender's looking at. If you're ever wondering, like, why do they care about a little bit of peeling and chipping paint? These are the reasons why. Impact on loan approval. Lenders require the property to meet certain standards before approving the loan. Significant issues such as structural damage, roof problems, outdated systems like plumbing or electrical can lead to loan denial and additional requirements. They also want to know the appraisal and loan amount. So a property's condition affects its appraised value, and lenders use that to determine the loan amount. Obviously, a lender does not want to loan more than the actual or appraised value of a property. Poor condition can lead to a lower appraisal, potentially reducing financing available to your buyers. So, loan type requirements. FHA, VA, and USDA loans have stricter property condition guidelines. These government-backed loans require the property to be safe, secure, and habitable, meaning issues such as peeling paint, foundation repairs, and safety hazards must be resolved before the loan is approved. So let me ask you guys this, and just somebody shout it out. Why would a lender care about peeling paint? Anybody? Why do lenders care about peeling paint?
For lead.
Exactly, for lead. So homes that were constructed before 1978 may and likely contain lead-based paint. And if you guys remember from your initial studies, anyone who eats, inhales, digests in any manner lead-based paint could suffer irreversible brain damage. So this is super important. And we learned in our classes when we all got our license about the disease pica, where some children or even some adults may eat non-food like substances, right? Well, lead paint is especially harmful because it has a sweet taste to it. It has a sweet taste. As weird as that sounds, I've never tried it. I've never eaten lead-based paint. I don't suggest anybody try it. But it has a sweet taste to it. So a lot of children will eat the paint because it is sweet. It is also potentially hazardous if you're doing work to your property, like dry sanding, and the dust kicks up in the air and you're inhaling it into your lungs. So you could be affected by lead poisoning by inhaling it and also drinking it if it contaminates a water source. So that is why peeling paint is such a danger in the eyes of a lender and of the government. So super common question I get a lot of times. Why do they care about a little bit of peeling paint outside? It's not like anybody's going to eat it. This is why. This is why. All right. Repair cost and financing. So some loan programs like an FHA 203K will actually allow the buyer to finance repairs that are needed to a property. So I've personally done these. I haven't done many, but over the course of my 18 years doing this, I've maybe done 7 or 8 of them. So basically the FHA 203K is almost like a new construction loan, only it is on a property that is not new construction. So for example, you would go in and say, okay, this home needs a new roof, and it needs a new furnace, and it needs a new hot water tank. And by looking up the numbers, me as your agent, I know that your roof's probably going to cost you 10 grand, and your furnace is going to cost you 5 grand, and your hot water tank is going to cost you 1,500. So what we're going to do is go back to your lender and say, hey, for this property to meet or exceed FHA guidelines, HUD guidelines, we are going to need, what did I just say? 10, 15, 16, 17. We're going to need $17,000 in addition to make repairs. So this client may be best suited for a 203K style loan instead of the traditional FHA. So, and a lot of lenders have specific departments within their mortgage company just for 203K loans, VA rehab loans, and then there's also conventional loans that allow you to wrap in repair costs as well. So those may be something, if you have a home where the clients are approved for FHA, they're not super tight on their numbers, they're buying underneath their means, and they really want to get in this home, but it's just not a great fit. This may be a conversation to have with Sarah. All right, moving right into buyer's risk and investment. Homes in poor condition pose a higher risk to lenders and buyers. Buyers could face unexpected repair costs, potentially jeopardizing their ability to repay the loan and maintain the property's value. So the lender wants to make sure that these people are going to be able to stay in their home and pay their mortgage for the long haul, or else it's just a bad investment, right? So this is one of the reasons why they want to make sure that these repairs are done prior to closing. Ensuring the property is in good condition not only facilitates loan approval, but also protects the investment for both the buyer and the lender. If the lender is in the business of foreclosing homes, the lender is not going to be in business for long. So they want to make sure that the buyer you're putting in that home has a home that needs very little to no maintenance for a specific period of time, and that the home is safe for them to continue living in, or the bank's just going to end up with it back, and that's not a good scenario for anybody. Let me move you over here. All right, so let's talk about the exterior inspection. Some common issues. The exterior of the property is a key factor in its value and its safety. So here are some common issues that can be identified during an exterior inspection and their potential impact. And I should note again that I don't expect any of you guys to be an expert. You are not inspectors. You are not appraisers. But you should be knowledgeable enough to be able to spot certain things outside and inside the property and say, hey, this looks kind of sus, and this may not pass inspection. So let's get an inspector out here to look at it and do our due diligence to make sure that you're buying a home that is appropriate for your loan program. All right, number one item is roofing problems. All right, so take a look at that roof. If it looks like the roof in the picture, it is a no-go. That roof needs replaced. That roof that we're looking at needed replaced 20 years ago. So missing, cracked, or curling shingles is a no-go. Signs of leaks, water damage, or mold growth will not pass. The impact is poor roof conditions can lead to interior water damage, mold, and structural issues, which again could cause the buyers not to be able to pay their mortgage the next month, and could also cause them to abandon the property. Next, foundation cracks. Visible cracks, settling, or uneven surfaces around the foundation would cause the loan to be denied without repair. So the impact of that is structural instability, water infiltration, and potentially costly repairs. I can't talk. I can never talk on these things. So check for foundation cracks, any type of blocks that are coming out, any type of long cracks, any type of sitting or settling water would be a no-go for an FHA loan. Next, take a look at the siding and the paint. Peeling paint, damaged or missing siding, or wood rot is a no-go. If you see any signs, of these items. If you're representing a buyer, you may want to point those out to your buyer and just let them know that these could be, repairs that could come up on the appraisal. So these may be things that they want to have the home inspector look at as well, so they really know what they're getting into. If you are listing a property, definitely point these out to your seller. If you're using the walkthrough list for sellers in your listing contract or your listing presentation, this would be something that you would notate on there, that there's peeling paint. We see peeling paint a lot on foundation blocks on the exterior, porches, steps, handrail. If there's wood, if it's wood, then soffit and fascia, box gutters around windows. If they're old wood windows, so always check those as well. Impact: exposure to moisture can lead to rot, mold, and reduced property value. Gutters and drainage. So clogged or damaged gutters, downspouts that are not directing water away from the foundation can get hit on your appraisal. You can see in the photo here, the gutter is not properly attached to the roof. There's that big gap in there, which would just let that water roll right into, right down the walls, creating rot. So the impact: water damage to the foundation, erosion, and basement flooding. So believe it or not, this is the second leading cause of foundation issues in basements, is your gutters and your drainage, only surpassed by hydraulic pressure due to yard runoff because of the grading and the drainage around the property. So if you even look at this on your own home every spring and make sure that your gutters are properly attached, that your gutter hangers haven't bent or have come off, because it could cause structural damage and you could lose structural integrity to your home. Windows and doors. Broken seals, rotting frames, or improper installation. So another one I get a lot is a single pane in the window is cracked. Will it pass FHA? The answer is no, it will not. The window frame is rotted. Will it pass? No, it will not. I can open the window, but it's slammed shut immediately. It doesn't open and close without assistance. Will it pass? The answer is no, it will not. So the windows and doors must be fully operational. The impact for HUD, and what they say the reason why they don't allow it, is poor insulation, energy efficiency, and it could cause water leaks. Landscaping and grading. We just talked about this on the gutters. Another reason, probably the number one reason that would cause structural damage to a home: improper grading, overgrown vegetation, and draining problems. Okay, so what happens is the water rolls off the yard. It goes down into that microscopic space between the dirt in your foundation. It freezes, and that's how we get bad foundation walls. So if you've ever walked in or shown a property where there's a big crack or a big belly midway down the wall, it's probably due to hydraulic pressure, because there is not enough grading or too much overgrown vegetation on the exterior of the property, and it is freezing, and when water freezes, it expands, and the path of least resistance is an empty basement. So it will cause the walls to belly out. It could also cause a flooding of the basement space as well, and it can ruin things like the hot water tank and the furnace if it gets high enough. So HUD's impact statement is: water pooling near the foundation, soil erosion, and pest infestation is not permissible. You want to check the decks and stairs. Check for loose or damaged boards, unstable railing, or improper construction. Improper construction would be the rise and run is not of equal height, causing a trip hazard. Okay, so the rise and run of each one of your steps, meaning how tall they are and how wide the step is they all have to be the same, or somebody could fall on their face by walking up the steps and not noticing the height difference. So the impact is safety hazards such as slips, trips, or falls, potential liability issues, and structural damage from rot or decay. And it says potential liability issues. It means that they are protecting the future homeowner from having a guest over, falling on their face, busting their nose, and then suing the pants off of them. So tip, less than 3, let it be. 3 or more will it will fail. Just be smart and add a rail. So less than 3, let it be. 3 or more, it will fail. Just be smart and add a rail. What does that mean? What does that saying mean? Less than 3, let it be. Any guesses?
Less than 3 steps?
Mm-hmm. What do you got to do? What do you got to do if it's more than 3?
Add a handrail.
Add a handrail. Less than 3, let it be. 3 or more, it will fail. Be smart and add a rail. So if you have more than 3 steps, you must have a handrail based on HUD requirements. If it has less than 3 steps, you do not need a handrail. So less than 3, let it be. If I can move my little thing here. All right. Now we're moving on to the interior inspection. Does anybody have any questions on exterior or anything to add? There's a lot. The list goes on and on. I'm just trying to hit the things that we see all the time. So does anybody else have anything they want to add for the exterior of the property? No? Has anybody got hit with these repairs? I know you have.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, lead-based paint.
I think all of them.
The more you do it, the more you'll see, trust me. And again, you can go on to HUD.gov and there is a full 300-page booklet on everything that needs to be done. Like I said, we're just going over the ones that we see commonly in this training. All right, so let's talk about interior inspection. So critical areas to watch are going to be your electrical, your plumbing, your HVAC, and your basements and crawl spaces. So these are going to be your most critical areas. They're the ones where we have issues crop up the most. So let's take a look at some of those. The first is going to be outdated wiring. Everybody hates to hear this. Knob and tube or aluminum wiring. Does FHA, USDA, or VA home loans allow for knob and tube wiring?
No.
No, they do not. No. And why don't they allow for knob and tube?
Fire hazards.
Yep, it's a fire hazard. So even though knob and tube was once considered a very safe style of wiring, and if it's brand new today, it absolutely can be, they no longer consider it safe because it's outdated for a couple of reasons. So the knob and the tube wiring, they have 2 separate, a hot and a cold wire spaced away from each other in these ceramic nodules, and they run perpendicular to each other. They never touch, which is a great thing. That was a great invention, that you keep them away from one another. However, knob and tube does not allow for enough power to come into the house based off of how we live these days. So back in the days, we weren't drawing a lot of power. We weren't using microwaves and computers and hair dryers and all of the things we love to use in today's world. So they didn't need as much power. So that's one thing. Another thing is that over time, they start to break down. And as they start to break down and they get slack, then they can start touching, creating a fire, especially if there is something there that is easily flammable, like insulation. So our insulation today is highly flammable in a lot of cases. And it's not uncommon for homeowners who don't understand knob and tube wiring to go up in the attic and lay fiberglass insulation right on top of the wiring, just making the entire house kindling. So the third reason, which is also very common, is that knob and tube has been played with over time. So they've added aluminum wire to knob and tube, and then they've added on copper wire to aluminum wire, and it just becomes a mess because things are overheating, because you're mixing all of these types of wires together, and it just becomes a big conductor. All right, so they don't want knob and tube, they don't want aluminum wiring in there. We don't see aluminum wiring as often as knob and tube in our area, but it's probably there if you look hard enough. Today's wiring is Romax, and it is a copper wire. So it comes in a plastic sheathing, and underneath that sheathing has the wires, and they all have sheathing like a a rubbery substance that keeps them all separate. And they also come with a ground these days. So if you have knob and tube, it's a no-go. So inadequate services is something that gets hit, and an inadequate service is usually when we see a 60 amp panel. So 60 amp panels can be hit because there's not enough amperage for the pole. So we want to see, 100 amps or 200 amps is even better. But if you have a 100 amp panel, you can usually, it's fine. 60 amp panels could be hit at the discretion of the appraiser. Faulty outlets or visible burn scorches on any outlets or switches, they will hit them, and lack of GFCI outlets. So who knows what a GFCI is? A lot of people just call them GFIs, and they're not GFIs, they are GFCIs. So what is a GFCI outlet?
Ground fault circuit interrupter.
That had to be Kevin. I can't see who said it.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks, buddy. Love it. Yes, GFCI is designed to have an automatic shutoff when it gets overloaded. And these need to be anywhere where there is a water source. Okay, so anywhere where there is a water source, you need to have a GFCI outlet. Those areas are going to be on the exterior of the property, like a porch where you would plug in Christmas lights. That's going to be in your kitchens, your bathrooms, your laundry rooms, and in your basement area. So a lot of times the GFCI is in the laundry area in the basement, or there is a GFCI to the right of the panel box. The GFCI is important, and a GFCI will not work on knob and tube wiring. So even if you have a cellar that tied it in the wall where you can't see, you hit that GFCI and there is no ground, so it's not going to work anyway. And your appraiser will hit the reset button to make sure they trip. Anywhere where you are 5 to 6 foot from a water source needs to be GFCI protected. So just think the length of most of our bodies away from a water source. Now, one thing I do have to mention is that a lot of times you can connect your GFCI throughout your kitchen. So a lot of times you'll have 6 different outlets in your kitchen. Only one of them is GFCI. That's okay as long as they are wired properly. So what the appraiser will do is put a tester on it, plug it in, they'll hit the reset button, make sure that the main one works, and then they'll go to the next one and they'll go back and hit the button. And if the light goes off, then they are tied together. If it does not go off, if there's power still there, well, then it's wired improperly. So just because you have one on either side of the sink and both of them are not, don't say GFCI on them, doesn't mean that they're not. They have to be tested to make sure they're connected properly. All right, next up, plumbing systems. You're going to want to look for leaks and water damage. So stains underneath the sinks, along the baseboards, outdated plumbing like galvanized pipes that are corroded, and water pressure issues, weak or inconsistent flow. So your appraiser may look for all of these things, and you should be as well when you are representing a buyer or a seller. The best thing to do, especially if the bathroom's on the second floor, is figure out where the bathroom is and look up at the ceiling. That'll tell you whether you have a leaky toilet or potentially a leaky faucet or shower. Don't be afraid when you're listing a home to turn on the water. See how the water pressure is. That way you can point that out to the sellers ahead of time that it could be a problem, especially when you have corroded pipes. Galvanized pipes seize in on themselves, restricting water flow. So a lot of times that's a good measure to kind of see if maybe that is an issue. If you don't know a whole lot about plumbing, turn on that water and see what the water pressure is like. Your appraiser, whoever that appraiser is, whether you represent the buyer or the seller, is going to do it. They will turn on the water to make sure they have adequate flow. HVAC systems. This is probably the hardest out of them all. And this one takes some skill and practice to be able to figure out the ins and the outs of the HVAC systems. So age of heating and cooling units, 15 years or older, may be in need of replacement, and the appraiser or the underwriter can call for that as a condition of the loan, is that they get replaced. It's not always super easy to figure out the age of the furnace. So this is something that if it looks like it is an aging unit, make sure that you ask the inspector, the home inspector who's coming out, to pay close attention to. Read the seller's disclosures. If nothing's mentioned, contact the listing agent to figure out how old that furnace is. If there's any evidence of poor maintenance, like super dirty filters, soot marks, improper venting, or no venting at all. I've seen no venting at all, where the vent goes into the basement. That is a major, major health hazard. Like, that's get out of the basement, somebody could die kind of hazard. And why, let me ask you this, why do we care about the venting of a furnace? What could happen?
Carbon monoxide.
Yep, carbon monoxide poisoning, the silent killer. It has no odor. You can't see it. The only thing that happens is you start to feel weak, you pass out, and then you die because you can't get out of the house. So proper venting is so important when it comes to furnaces. And all clients should have a carbon monoxide detector somewhere down wherever their furnace is, usually in the basement, but somewhere near the furnace to go off in case something would happen. All right. Basements and crawl spaces, water intrusion, dampness, mold, water stains. We see that a lot. So dampness is a reason to not get an FHA, USDA, or VA loan. Cracks in walls or floors, indicating structural issues. We talked about that on the exterior of the house. And lack of insulation or vapor barriers. So on this one, I've actually had this one hit, where I sold a house that had its regular basement, and then they had an addition where they had like the big family room addition off the back. And instead of extending the basement, they just did like a crawl space, and they had a window from the basement underneath the crawl space where like the plumbing and the heat ducts and stuff were ran, but it was just dirt under there. It was just dirt. Like, in this space was maybe, I don't know, 2.5, 3 feet high. Like, I wasn't shimmying back there. I don't know who was shimmying back there to put that stuff in, but I don't know. So it got caught out on an inspection because there was no vapor barrier. There was nothing between those floor joists and the ground. So my seller at that point, who happened to be my father, he didn't build the addition, it was there already, had to hire somebody who I would only assume was a very thin individual to shimmy back there and install a vapor barrier, which in essence was sealing off that area, buying 10 mil plastic and then permanently affixing it to that area. And then had to get a fan in there that would kick on when moisture would get high to blow any of that humid air into the regular basement space where it would be caught by the dehumidifier. And that had to be done for HUD. So they do call it in there. So if you find these weird little areas where there's a crawl space and you think the appraiser isn't at least going to put their head and shoulders in there with a flashlight and look, you'd be wrong, because they do. And it was a huge expense for him, but it was something he had to do to sell the home. All right. Now, any questions on interior common repairs? No. All right, let's go on to health and safety hazards. HUD will also require that we look for things like lead-based paint, asbestos, mold and mildew, and pest infestations. So we talked a little bit about lead-based paint. Homes built before 1978 may contain lead-based paint, which poses serious health risks, especially to children. Peeling and chipping paint can release toxic lead dust. So HUD regulations requires proper remediation of lead hazards in homes before financing approval. This includes removing, sealing, and covering the paint by certified professionals to ensure the property meets safety standards, protecting both the residents and the community from lead exposure. Just so that you guys know, if your buyers have any fears of lead-based paint, especially if anybody in their family has pica, lead-based paint inspections are offered by a lot of inspectors, and it is a contingency on your sales agreements. It is probably one of the least used contingencies and inspections that we offer. I don't know why, but it is. Next is asbestos. So asbestos is commonly found in older homes, especially in insulation, pipe coverings, roofing materials, and old floor tiles. When asbestos-containing materials are disturbed, they release harmful fibers that can cause serious respiratory illnesses, including lung cancer and mesothelioma. It's critical to have professional testing to identify its presence, and if found, removal should be done by certified professionals to ensure safety and to prevent contamination. In the photo here, can anybody guess on their screen what that is a photo of? What type of asbestos and what it's called? Nobody wants to take a stab at it? No, nobody. All right, well, I will tell you that asbestos is called vermiculite. Vermiculite was an insulation used in the 1960s, and vermiculite itself is not an asbestos-based material. So vermiculite is mined out of the ground, and it is used as a pretty decent product, or it was, as a loose product for insulation, and it worked very, very well. And in fact, Mahoningtown in Newcastle was built on vermiculite. So they made a ton of money prior to 1960 on mining vermiculite, and they would come through the railroad cars there in Mahoningtown. If you're from Lawrence County, a little bit of history for you. However, there was a mine, and I believe it was in the Carolinas, where they were mining vermiculite, and it just so happened to be contaminated with natural asbestos. So if you have vermiculite in a property that came from the Carolinas, it is very, very common for that vermiculite to be contaminated for asbestos, and it will pop on asbestos lab testing if you do an inspection. Okay. What's weird is that the city of Newcastle really does not have a ton of vermiculite that comes back positive. Not all of it, but there are fewer instances in the city of Newcastle where it comes back contaminated. However, the city of Elwood City and the surrounding areas there, like just outside of Shenango, Coppell, even into Beaver Falls, almost always come back positive for asbestos. So it just depends on the plant that it came from. Good rule of thumb is if you're seeing vermiculite, it looks like this. Sometimes it's a little sparkly, almost looks kind of like glass. Good thing to do is to get that tested. It's a fairly simple process. It takes about a week to come back. It's not very expensive. It's like $150. Last time I did one, could be a little bit more now. But have the home inspector take a sample of it, check it for asbestos for your clients. If it's undisturbed, like, HUD says, don't disturb it. They say, and I'm no expert in this, but they say that, there's very, very little risk of it. However, if your buyers are looking to maybe finish their attic into a living space and it's covered with vermiculite and they're going to be disturbing it, they could pose serious health risks, and having it mitigated and taken out is extremely expensive. We're talking tens of thousands of dollars. So definitely something you want to look out for. Mold and mildew. Mold often appears in damp areas like basements, bathrooms, round windows, and pipes, and it can present as black, green, or white patches on the walls, ceilings, or floors. Not all mold is black. Impact on air quality and health risks. HUD states that mold releases spores that degrade indoor air quality, potentially causing allergic reactions, respiratory issues, and asthma, especially in sensitive individuals. So ways to treat: air quality tests and surface swabs conducted by professionals can accurately detect mold presence and guide remediation. So not all mold is created equal. There's all kinds of, different types of risk factors. Some are mold, some are common mildew. It's not true that like all black mold is what we call black mold. Sometimes toxic black mold isn't even black. So don't assume that you know what it is. Have it tested by a professional. Pest infestations. I think this goes without saying, but we're going to talk about it just for a hot second. Termites, mud tubes on wall, hollow surrounding wood, discarded wings near windows and doors. Okay, so if you're looking at the picture there on your right-hand side, those little translucent looking ants, those are termites. All right, termites kind of look like ants from a glance, but they are translucent or almost red or a light copper color. But they make these really nifty wood tubes, these mud tubes, and they're basically just termite poo. And those become their roadways so they can move around the structure. Carpenter ants, sawdust like frass, damaged wood, large black ants near wooden surfaces. So instead of seeing mud tubes, you're going to see chewed up wood. A lot of times, like on the windowsills in the basement where the glass block windows are, you'll see a lot of wood, almost looks like sawdust in spider webs downstairs. That could be a sign of carpenter ants. Powder post beetles leave a fine powdery dust near small holes in the wood, crumbling or weakening wood structures. If you've ever seen a wood boring bee making a hole inside a post on your porch or patio, what they're doing is they're boring a hole and then laying their larvae egg in there. Powder post beetles are very much the same. Even though we don't see a lot of powder post beetles infestation, they're one of the few that we see in this area. Termites and carpenter ants are definitely more prevalent. It does happen from time to time, especially with reused barnwood in houses. So we see that a lot if we have reused barnwoods for posts or for decorative reasons, like exposed beams in an addition or something. Sometimes you will find powder post beetle holes. Some other pests, even though they're not on your list, that could make HUD, blink twice at ensuring the loan are going to be types of rodents. So obviously this goes without saying, you can have rats running around the place. You can have rat holes, mice, moles, any type of droppings, anything like that. So they could call that into question as well. All right, so HUD, the 3 S's, this is what they're looking for: safety, security, and soundness. Safety, ensure the home does not pose immediate hazards to occupants. Security, doors, windows, and roofing are secure from weather and intrusions. Soundness, the structure is solid and all major systems function properly. In short, you need to put yourself in your buyer's shoes and say, okay, this may not be, a house that I would buy, but if I had to move in here tomorrow, am I going to be safe? Am I going to be secure? And is the home sound? And if any of those are no, then chances are pretty good that you're not getting a government-backed loan for your client. So you or your clients can read more about HUD guidelines by visiting hud.gov/program. Offices, and then there's an extended one here. This one shows you where all of the safety checklist items are. If you go to hud.gov, I promise you there's a ton of resources on there that are really, really helpful, as well as you can pull the entire HUD guidelines manual on there, and that is the HUD guideline manual used by appraisers and underwriters. All right, wrapping it up, we're going to talk about your role as an agent. Your role as an agent is to educate your clients. So inform your clients about HUD's minimum property standards and the significance of those requirements in the financing process. It is important to stay updated because changes in HUD regulations as well as local codes change constantly. Year after year after year, there are updates to the book. There are things that are put in, there are things that are taken away. So this could impact your ability to help a client with property eligibility. It's your job as an agent to evaluate the property. Again, you're not inspectors, you're not appraisers. I don't expect you to be as knowledgeable as them or to pretend that you are them in any way. They have very important jobs, but our job is also important. You should be doing an initial assessment with your client. So just conducting a thorough walkthrough of the property, identifying potential repair issues that could affect their financing eligibility, and help them prioritize these issues. So help them understand which repairs are critical and which ones don't need immediate attention. Tip here is do not overstep. Realtors should always defer to a home inspector. Your next role is to coordinate inspections. So recommend professionals. If the roof looks like it needs to be replaced, make sure that you are getting a home inspector out there. And if the home inspector confirms that the roof does need to be replaced, well, then it's your job to let them know of a few roofers in the area that can come out and help give them estimates as well, or, suggest necessary repairs. Assist them by scheduling the inspections and ensuring that they understand the importance that this is an important step in the buying process. Advise them on repair solutions. So talk to them about their repair options. So one of those may include DIY versus hiring a professional to help them make informed decisions. And then also understand their budget considerations. So help them understand how much that repair is going to cost based on getting the professionals out there, and then help them make a decision on whether this home is still right for them and whether they can afford both the purchase of the property and the repairs needed to get it to close. So focus on facts, not assumptions. Be prepared to show your research. So if you don't know, in short, if you don't know what you're talking about, don't talk about it. If you go out and you're like, I don't really know enough about roofs to say that roof needs to be replaced, but it looks a little sketch, it's okay to tell your buyers, hey, I'm no roofer, but that doesn't look right. I would highly suggest we get a home inspection if you move forward on this home and get a roofer out there to take a look at it. There's nothing wrong with saying that. They don't expect you to be a roofer. They don't expect you to be an electrician. They expect you to be an agent. They expect you to be their advocate. So it's okay just to say, it doesn't look right to me. I'm going to suggest you get a home inspection, and I'm going to suggest that we call a roofer to come out and look at it. Documentation and communication. So gather documentation. Ensure that all repair estimates and reports are well documented and accessible for financing process. And then communicate with the lenders. Act as a liaison between the client and the lenders, providing necessary documentation to demonstrate the repairs will be completed, however that looks like. A lot of times with HUD loans, sometimes the seller will make necessary repairs. Sometimes the buyers will do a pre-possession addendum and make necessary repairs. Sometimes it requires a professional to step in, like in the example with the roof. Buyers, unless your buyer is a roofer, the buyer's not going to be doing that repair. So sometimes you have to coordinate and get the roofer up there, making sure that you get a full list of all repairs and a paid receipt, and sending that over to lender and title is so important. Make sure that it doesn't fall by the wayside, or it could hang you up on your closing. You want to negotiate for your client. So again, negotiating those repairs with the seller and making sure that you can get them to the closing table with a home that follows the 3 S's. And incorporate repairs into the purchase agreement. So make sure that you have proper documentation of any repairs that the seller is going to be doing, or any reductions in price, if there is one, additional concessions. And then if the buyer is going to be doing those repairs, make sure you get that pre-settlement addendum so that they have the right to go in and make those repairs. Again, keeping a hold of that documentation. During the repair process, you should be tracking repairs, so help clients monitor the progress of any required repairs to ensure that they are completed on time. And then follow-up inspections. Arrange for a follow-up inspection as needed to verify that the repairs meet the necessary standards. Please do not assume that the seller made repairs. Please do not assume that the seller made all of the repairs, or that the repairs are going to meet HUD guidelines. If you are representing a buyer who has a seller making a repair, it is your responsibility to go out there and check before the appraiser comes back. If an appraiser has to return multiple times to a property, it could cost your buyer anywhere from $200 to $300 per trip. So this could get to the point, especially if your buyer is short on cash, where they do not have enough money to close, and then all your work is for naught. So you want to make sure that the work has been done and that it's been documented properly before you send the appraiser out for a reinspection of repairs. All right, you are their advocate. Stand by your clients throughout the whole process and ensure their interests are represented, especially if complications arise regarding repairs and financing. All right, real quick, and then we are done. Did you know the HUD Minimum Property Standards Program was established in 1934 as a part of the National Housing Act, which created the Federal Housing Administration? This program was designed to help improve housing standards and conditions in the United States during the Great Depression by providing federally backed loans for home purchases and construction. The Great Depression significantly impacted the housing market, leading to further decline in home ownership rates due to widespread unemployment and financial instability. The establishment of programs like FHA in 1934 aimed to increase homeownership by making it easier for Americans to obtain mortgages, which ultimately helped raise homeownership rates the following decades. All right, so it all came about due to the Great Depression. All right, so we'll open it up for questions. Anybody have any questions, comments, or additions to add? No, you guys are quiet. Nothing at all? You guys must be sleeping.
No, I'm not sleeping.
Thanks, Jim.
Yeah, sure. Even like working with investors and everything, like you said, we're not home inspectors or anything, but I'm walking through properties, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's asbestos, right? We'd have to have it tested to see, but like pointing out these things to make sure that they know what they're buying, particularly, people who are just buying like a regular home versus like an investment.
Absolutely. And I tell you what, it really adds to your unique value proposition. One of the things I did for both my buyers and my sellers is I had a HUD guidelines checklist. So if I was listing a property, or if they had decided on a property and they were on a HUD loan, I would go through with them and create this checklist of potential issues that could arise. And I'd be happy to share that. We're actually going to go over it on an upcoming training with the listing presentation. But it would just go room to room. We would start on the exterior, like roof needs to be inspected. If it did, I'd put a check mark next to it. Busted sidewalks, check mark. Peeling and chipping paint on the porch. If there was, I'd put a check mark. And that way we had a rolling list of potential things that we needed to keep an eye on. That way, if I was representing a buyer, the buyer knew it in advance, like these are some things that could come up on your inspection or on your appraisal where we may have to negotiate with the seller. And if the seller won't negotiate, well, these may be items that you need to be prepared to do. And I think it set very realistic expectations for the buyer. And doing it on the listing side, I loved it on the listing side because I was able to tell my sellers like, hey, these are things that are going to come up. You can fix them ahead of time if you're handy or get somebody in that but if we wait until the appraisal, one, you're going to have very little time to fix them, and two, you may be at the mercy of the buyer's contractor to fix them, which could cost you more money. And we'll probably get a lower offer because everybody's going to see if I can see them. It means any agent can see them. And we're probably going to get a lower offer on your house. So let's take the time to correct these issues now. That way we open ourselves up to more buyers and a higher sales price.
Yeah, the checklist would be great. Too, like just yesterday, I had FHA buyers I was doing a home tour for, and you walking through the house and talking about FHA appraisals, etc. And even just as simply going through like, upon every first meeting, the consumer notice, and you speak about like these checklists or the consumer notice, it builds confidence, it builds trust between you and your sellers or buyers, or even your sellers, because you're like, hey, this person, they know what they're talking about. I remember even like hosting an open house years ago, and I was, of course, going over the consumer notice, and these people, they actually brought their realtor with them. And the next thing I know, the husband comes running upstairs, and the wife's downstairs with the realtor, and he's like, hey, can you be our realtor? That's like, they never went over this stuff with us. I'm like, yeah, sure, as long as you're not under contract, But yeah, I think it goes a long way.
It does. It absolutely does. Rebecca, do you do any type of checklist whenever you go through houses with buyers and sellers? You're the checklist queen.
I actually, so my dad is selling his property to his tenant, and they have an FHA loan. And I went through the whole checklist with my dad prior to the appraisal, and everything went great. So, I've done that prior. I also just got some new FHA buyers, and I kind of gave them the checklist to kind of like already get them like aware of like, okay, this is the reason why if you send me a house that, I look at the pictures and I can already tell there's still mud on the wall, and the seal, the tiles on the floor are missing, because they get super disappointed, but it's like, we're trying to not waste your time. So I have been kind of giving them a checklist ahead of time, so that way they know what to look for too. So they're not like, well, why can't I go look at this house? So I have been kind of having that conversation ahead of time and letting them know, like, they're doing this to help you out as a consumer as well. So
yeah, no, I love that. Like I said, I am huge on your own unique value proposition. I mean, adding something like that as part of your overall value proposition, what sets you apart from other agents, knowing this stuff and being able to guide them through it will help you, get more clients, close more deals, and be able to garnish a higher commission because of the service and the value that you provide.
yeah,
Absolutely.
and I've also a lot like investors usually typically who use my dad, to do the maintenance on their homes, he'll go through and walk through it and give them an idea of like, okay, what is it going to cost to get this up and rented? And that's also nice to have, because once they work with my dad, they just want my dad. So,
He's a nice guy.
And knowing too, whenever you're kind of given a price, always know to tell them like I'd add at least 20% onto that, because you want to prepare them. There's always more work that's going to have to be done once you start the work. Things just unexpectedly come up. So always telling them to give themselves that cushion of at least, 20, maybe 20% in the long run, because things come up. Roofs. I mean, I've had roofs come up that are 20,000, because it's just a crazy roof. So, you got to give yourself that cushion as well too.
All right, great. No, that's wonderful. Well, if you guys want the HUD checklist, that'll be part of our new listing presentation. I'm just putting the finishing touches on that. So definitely join that training. I'm going to be posting it here in the next couple of days to ROGU agent training and events. One thing that I used to do before I opened the brokerage and had a team is we had a full listing presentation, step by step that you could just follow along with when you went to your sellers, that really showed your unique value proposition, really went over every detail and worksheet form that you can do with your sellers, including the HUD repairs checklist. It went over all of the marketing that you can provide, came up with a marketing menu so that you can allow your sellers to choose what commission structure is best for them. So I'm revamping that, redoing that for today's time, and then we'll have a full training on that. And all of those who attend the in-person training will get a printed manual that they could use at their seller appointments. And you could reuse these check sheets, these HUD check sheets, with your buyers too. They're not just specific to your sellers, but they do work great when you're doing a seller appointment. So make sure you come back and check that out. But of course, like always, I will stay on the line in case anybody has any questions after we're all gone. But thank you guys for hanging in. I know that this was a long training today. I really appreciate it. And I will see you all later in the week.